get going. Jam-packed agenda as always. So welcome everybody to the Spring Washington State Good Roads and Transportation Association Quarterly. That's a mouthful. Happy to have you all with us today. The meeting's being held virtually. I'm here in the confines of Labor's Local 242. But happy to do this virtually and get the best possible turnout and the best conversation that we can today. So as you can see, again, we have a jam-packed agenda. So really just going to roll right into it. So our first item on the agenda today, we're going to hear from Dave Gent. Dave is with the Washington Asphalt Pavers Association, and also the chair-elect for the State Good Roads Association. Also, as part of the conversation, Billy Wallace is the legislative director in Washington, Northern Idaho District Council of Laborers, and our State Good Roads 2023 Advocate of the Year. We'll be hearing from him as well. And then also Jennifer Ziegler, Washington Highway Users Federation Chair, and Paula Hammond, immediate past chair of the Washington Highway Users Federation. So I know Dave has prepared a slideshow to kind of go over with all of us here, and with Paula and Jennifer kind of chiming in and giving their perspective on a lot of things. And then we're going to leave it up to Billy's on the road over to Spokane. So he's listening in right now and driving. So give him a little bit of heads up so we can pull over and give us a little bit of comments there at the end. So Dave, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure. So thank you, Billy. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody showing up this morning. This says legislative review, but this is specifically a legislative review from Good Roads perspective and from my perspective. But of course, you've got three dignitaries and me that can kind of put nuance into this. And I just, not knowing how many of the 70 people that are going to show up here have kind of a view of how the landscape came together this session. I just wanted to go over some quick slides and kind of put some perspective on it. So short session. So usually, that session used to be a session to kind of tune things up. But from the transportation perspective, the legislative body was looking at mega cost overruns that were coming in. They're nearing $1 billion now, with some still out there not known. Fish passage cost, there was a shock just before the session started that fish passage was going to be up to double what it was originally thought to be, another $4 billion possibly. They had the legislature, we had to, show a solid commitment for the Columbia River Crossing Bridge to make sure that we had kept our partner in Oregon, in lockstep with us and get maximum federal support. There was uncertainty of cost for the new electric ferries. Don't know how many they're going to be able to afford, how to make sure that we have a ferry fleet that's operable. The list kind of goes on and on. You can read them yourself, but the Climate Commitment Act was also another issue that will impact transportation and the budget overall. It's the governor's last lame duck session that has some impact on how the discussion went, and then all the other things: encampments, graffiti, rest areas, etc. And next slide, please. For the first time in living memory, then this is the thing that I focused on, and with the help of the other three dignitaries, kind of tried to raise awareness to. We were looking at a lost season for highway preservation, in spite of all of the preservation backlog. 43 critical paving preservation projects, bridges and paving, and landslides and things like that were funded under the original 2022 Move Ahead Washington appropriation model were frozen in August 2023. So the industry felt quite whipsawed and really needed to figure out how to not lose a season. So virtually no preservation work was funded for the 2024 construction season that wasn't already in place. You can go ahead and go. So we need legislative action to get some added dedicated funding. These were the projects that were shown to us as the ones that were frozen. as of August 2023, and were basically taken off the list and notes added to some of them that if there was legislation money come from the next legislature, some of them would be reinstated. Next slide, please, Noel. So this is how this happened. The budget before the Move Ahead Washington Act. This is just a real quick notes on this. Before, we were spending about hovering around $1 billion a year in pure preservation funding. And then the next year, go ahead, next slide. We were pleased with the support that the Move Ahead Washington legislation added to preservation, kind of recognizing that we had a preservation backlog, added a lot of money that was front-loaded authority to the DOT to try to catch up on some of the preservation backlog, and you could see how that affected the preservation funding. And that's what we planned for as of the end of the 2022 session. And that's what our industry planned for. Go forward one more. After the 2023 session, however, because of some of the things that we talked about on the first slide and other issues and cost overruns, et cetera, that money authority was removed, and we were throttled back to much lower money dedicated to preservation, pure preservation. And so the DOT, though it had planned to do the middle bar, the 1.338 billion, was now had to plan for the money that was left over because we had already spent half through the biennium. That money had already been spent because of the new authority that came through. So next slide. So those 43
Dave,
critical, yes.
I just wanted to clarify real quick. It's Billy. When you speak of on the last slide, when you speak of we, can you, I mean, I mentioned it kind of in your introduction, but can you talk a little bit about when you say we, what does that entail?
Well, in my case, I mean, it's pretty much preservation contractors, design, bid, build contractors, kind of the bread and butter contractors that have, are local contractors, live in their communities, have asphalt plants, in my case, in their communities, have worked on bridges for generations, et cetera. Those folks kind of plan their business plan around what is the budget going forward. And plan an asphalt plant might take 4, 5, 6 years to get permitted and built. Quarries and gravel pits and crushers and all that kind of stuff have to be planned well ahead of time. So that's who I'm talking about when I say us. But it's basically the design, bid, build community that kind of builds the new construction stuff throughout the state, the preservation work. Does that answer your question, Billy?
Yeah. I just want the audience to know that, we just don't the industry has to gear up for this added money, right? And when it gears up and invests millions and millions of dollars into the industry and getting ready for this.
And the DOT, I mean, the DOT has been very good about, knowing that there was an issue with capacity and the amount of work that was coming and let us know right after the 2022 session, here's the work that's coming. Can you handle it? Do you have the capacity? And we, do have the capacity, geared up for the capacity, hired crews, bought asphalt plants, 3 new asphalt plants. There's about 60 asphalt plants around the state. 3 brand new ones were put up in anticipation. Another, probably 2 dozen were retrofitted and, capacities upgraded, et cetera, in anticipation for the next 6 years of fairly robust funding. So that's who I'm talking about. But that goes throughout, guardrail contractors and milling contractors and bridge deck contractors and all those folks doing the same thing and getting ready to be able to bid and build the work that the DOT has ready to go. So the response of knowing that a lost season was coming was the industry coalitions came together in an effort to highlight and salvage the 24 preservation construction season, the season we're in right now. And so there's Good Roads, Washington Highway User Fund Federation, the laborers, operators, building trades, Washington Construction Industry Council, the whole list there regional good roads associations, some other caucuses came together or came back. Good Roads, our Move Ahead Washington, Supply Chain Caucus, et cetera. So we were all kind of on the same page as we know that preservation can't be denied for a year and keep a healthy situation going forward. You know, in trying to figure out how to present this, you know, halfway through the session, we basically said, we know that we can get 17 projects back from that frozen project list. Those costs are about $110 million. If all things being equal, we'd also like to have some transfers for complete streets, because complete streets, which is a great idea, a way to build out work as preservation is done, is that money comes out of preservation. So if there's not any funding specifically for complete streets, then there's less bang for the buck, even though we're doing good work there. And what we received in the end was $100 million for 2024, which brought 11 of those projects back together with funding for $80 million for the next 2 bienniums. So we can go to the next slide. So that last little box in the bottom is where we're at right now. And we are awaiting those projects to be re-released in May to hopefully get them paved during the good weather of the summer. That's going to be a little bit of a rush and a little bit of a difficult task because of, you know, generally those jobs are bid by now, and folks have planned for several months before they know before the work starts when the weather changes. Next slide. So this is kind of where I think we were at the end of the session. Secretary Millar said in the article, we got $100 million for preservation, and he said, we appreciate every one of those dollars, but we just need to keep remembering that the need is $1 billion a year, and we need about $2 billion per biennium. That's unfunded preservation right now. So we have dug, you know, a $19 billion preservation backlog right now, and we are trying to figure out through this coalition and legislation, the legislators that have been very that know that this issue is there. How do we work through that with all the other competing demands and get some kind of a better way forward, dedicated funds, diversion of general funds, et cetera, to preservation, because it just is not solving itself. You know, the way I think about it is, if all our dreams come true, if we got 100% of electric vehicles and fully functioning EV fleet, and for the ferries, and 100% clean transit and capacity of transit, and the ports working, all that stuff depends on a good road system. Everything we do depends on a good road system. And we are allowing our biggest asset to kind of crumble underneath our feet in some places. So next slide. So these are the bridge projects. Just the bridge projects that are due today are the orange dots that are due for some kind of preservation treatment. You can't see the roads quite as well, but the pavements, the orange pavements, are ones that are due for preservation treatment right now. There's a lot more than 43 there. There's hundreds that are in the backlog, and my message today is we need to work together to try to figure out how to do this in a different way going forward, because we're not solving the problem right now. I said a lot. Billy or Jennifer or Paula, please put some nuance in that. They were champions all through the session, all of them, but specifically Billy and I worked together. He was really the boots on the ground day to day, and much appreciated for everybody's work and trying to get this message across. That's the end of my presentation.
I would just jump in on that. Excuse me. The bridge slide is always interesting to see where they're due. And we've heard a lot about pavements. I think we're getting better at our messaging around asset management and the need in WSGRTA lingo, that's maintenance and preservation, but maintaining the assets that we have and making sure that we're investing in a way that keeps what we have open. as a starter. But the bridge story, I think, is interesting and nuanced enough that I'm hoping WSGRTA can help us tell that story of needs. You know, what if you don't invest in a certain bridge, doesn't mean it's going to fall down. But how do we characterize those bridge preservation needs in a way that builds out the story like we have with pavements? Because I think that would be an important thing to know. And the other thing I would just reinforce is what I think we should be pitching for is really beating the drum around asset management and sustainable ongoing funding. Like you said, Dave, you can't just start and stop a business that's going to support investments like preservation, like paving. You have to have that long-term sustainable funding in order to be able to look ahead and build what we need to do to take care of the system we have.
And I don't think anybody disagrees with that. It's just how do we get there? Because you know, the legislature is sometimes surprised by the cost increases in some of the work that's being done, and there were certainly cost increases across the board. But the design bid build community basically met the challenge and had the capacity and was competitive and built the stuff at the price that they kind of thought it would be built at. There were no cost overruns for design bid build in the large sense. So I've said enough.
And I would just add one more thing. I mean, look at the investments the legislature has chosen, you know, the revenue increases they've chosen to make over the years since even 2003. So we've got a tremendous appetite for improving our system. And we've, in my mind, overcommitted the investment for the money available. And so that's why preservation is always the lowest the lowest form of life when the money gets doled out. Somehow we have to change that script and recognize that as the legislature's practice of handpicking projects, that's where we've moved. The WSGRTA has moved away from the asset management, lowest life cycle cost approach that we had been on prior to 2003. So it's a makeup of having a lot of great projects under construction. Nobody can deny that, but we're oversubscribed. Now we have to dig out of that hole. And now I'll shut up.
Jennifer or Billy, you want to?
Yeah, I can jump in and maybe just do a step back at kind of bigger picture. So I think it's important for us to not forget the challenge that the legislature had going into this session. So, and Dave outlined some of those, but like to put a finer point on it, right? They had already made a commitment to address higher bids that they had received on the 405 Brickyard project. The 520 Portage Bay project was actually on hold because the bids were so much higher than funding allocated, that the chairs and the ranking members didn't feel like they could, make that choice, that had to be a decision of the full legislature. As Dave pointed out, they had the news in November that the last portion of the fish passage obligation was going to be the same amount as essentially the first 80% of that work, so another $4 billion. So I think, and then we had, this really unprecedented situation with preservation. So I think going into the session, all of us were preparing for a really bleak outcome. And the transportation leaders, that we'll hear from later today, I'd say, even though we're in a frustrating situation, did a great job of kind of patching it together to allow the system to keep moving along. So, they made sure to give the go-ahead on Portage Bay. They did find some additional preservation money. They did about $150 million for fish passage to keep those things plugging along. But the thing that they also did, which was something I've not seen them do in the past, is when they released the budget, and I just encourage everyone to go look at this document. When they released the budget, they actually released a separate chart that showed all of the ending fund balances over 25, 27 and 27, 29. And in 27, 29, out of, we've got 13 transportation accounts, 7 of those are projected to be in a negative fund balance. Yeah, so and I just highlight a couple of those that are really significant. I mean, motor vehicles estimated to be 74 million in the red by 27, 29. Move ahead is estimated to be 556 million in the red. The ferry accounts are like amazing how negative they are. So I'd say I just appreciate this conversation because I think, the transportation leaders are looking for help as we move forward to figure out how to address these issues. And I totally agree that a dedicated source of funds for preservation is an essential element, but also we just need to talk about how we're going to approach transportation and funding in the future, because our sort of go-to gas tax option really isn't the kind of option that it's been in the past. So I think those are just a few overview items I'd add.
Really?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Appreciate you putting up with me being on the road today. I don't have the fancy slides, but it's an honor to come in behind Dave and Paula and Jennifer. Amazing to be able to work with them and move forward. So since they covered everything, I'm going to go a little bit different direction and talk about future funding and what we're looking at with Initiative 2117. If this thing passes, we're looking at another 5.4 billion on top of the 902. So we're looking at probably a little over a $6 billion hole going forward. We have got to address, and I think we're going to have to move and talk to the legislators, both sides, about how we start moving potential sales tax money over. Everything that's going up and down on these roads here, the trucks, the cars, the sales tax, that's what it should be going to. And to get serious about the numbers that we're going to need to handle maintenance and preservation. I mean, I've had meetings in the last week with Senator Leas and Rep. Phi. We can't take another haircut in maintenance and preservation. We're already wearing a crew cut, and it's high and tight. There's nothing there to cut. We've got to come in, and like Roger said, and everybody knows, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, we have got to come in and fund transportation. With gas tax, it's continuing to go down. We're losing 2.5% a year. The CCA funding, that's going to eventually go away as we decarbonize. We're going into a dead end here. We have got to get real. We have got to look at the funding going forward and start addressing it seriously. It is what it is right now, but we can plan for the future. As more of these EVs come on board, we know they're 1,500, 1,800 pounds heavier. That is going to take an even bigger toll on the roads. We haven't even started talking about guardrails. I've seen video of Rivians from the University of Nebraska testing them at a 25-degree angle. They don't go through it, they go under it. And these things are anvils on wheels. So we're going to have to look at the infrastructure just around safety for this too. Again, appreciate everything, like Jennifer and Dave and Paula said, everything they did this year to try to make this work between the House and the Senate and talking, the leaders, the chairs, the ranking members, those guys are tight. And we're going to need to keep that going. And for right now, I'll make a little pitch for Senator King. Buddy, we need you to run. Do what you got to do. We're going to need you. We need your experience, and we need your ability to reach across the aisle and work with everybody. So please run again. Do what you got to do. But with that, again, amazing to get the 100 million. I know it didn't save everything. We had 40 projects that were scheduled. Like Dave said, there was plants that were set up, ready to go. That stuff's in place. We had the labor to do it also, coming from the labor side of this. So moving forward, we've got to have serious conversations of how we get this fixed. I know Will put out some numbers of how this compounds. We're at 50 million just to get back on track over the next 20 years. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of work. We've got to get there. We've got to have these conversations and tough decisions to be made. So with that, Billy, I'll wrap up, buddy, and get back on the road. And sorry about the sunglasses. There's this thing called the sun over here that I haven't seen since October. So
You look cool.
Well,
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
no, I appreciate all the expertise the four of you bring to the meeting. And before we wrap up this part of the agenda, I'd be reminisced if I didn't get a little bit of a safety plug in there. So I know Dave and Billy, you guys both work with the USI group, and maybe if you can give us an update on some of the work you guys have been doing there, just give a quick update to the group, either Billy or Dave.
Billy, are you
Go
comfortable?
ahead, Dave.
Well,
Yes.
I think the legislation in that respect, they tweaked a little bit the legislation that passed to make it more workable. So the work zone cameras ticketing system that is envisioned is going forward. Other than right now, the DOT is trying to get a vendor that they can work with. That is going to go into place. So that there'll be speed cameras and automatic ticketing in work zones in the near future, and they'll bounce around the state. And as the program comes online, more and more of those will come online to try to keep our work zones safer. The legislature also authorized that same kind of concept for cities and counties. You know, the safety aspect, which has really ballooned the last few years, over 800 fatalities in Washington State last year. We have to get a better handle on. You know, a lot of it is poor behavior by the drivers, and that's what these speed cameras are hopefully going to do is try to get that behavior changed around. And then more education, better systems, better warning systems for the workers. But you know, we put these crews together that work on these mobile work zones at night in one lane with traffic right next to them, and just get them to where they're working really well. And then we say, well, we don't have any work this year. That's not a way to keep good crews put together. So we're doing everything we can to try to figure out a way to keep these zones safer and still move forward. Billy, you're the expert, really. I'm just not in a car, so.
Okay. Well, I will add to what Dave said around 6115. That was a technical fix on the speed cameras. That I did talk to Tony Langgang a week and a half ago. They did find another vendor. They're moving forward with that. So far, everything's looking good, but that was 10 days ago. So those cameras should be coming on board. I'll also say that in the future that we're going to get in behind the 0.05. That just falls right in with the safety part of what USI is about. And then also, Dave touched on it briefly, the education, working with DOL and Bo over there. We're hoping to have something here really soon as far as making it mandatory for kids that are coming in, getting their driver's license, their permits, and they must take like a 45-minute video of how to actually drive in a work zone, what you're looking at, what it's telling you. So we're really pushing hard on that. We'll continue to move forward to that. We don't think we need legislation for that right now. If we can get it done through DOL, and Marco has been awesome on helping us guide through that. If we do need legislation, we'll get it there. We did have a meeting recently with USI. They did a presentation where they've done this in Oklahoma, and now Wisconsin's coming on board and doing the same thing. And they're seeing really good results from that. And, you know, we're going to see the results of that also after we get it in 10 years from now. When we have good drivers out there, I think we're going to see those results, because a lot of kids don't even get their license till they're 18, and they're not taking the training. They don't have to. So getting ahead of this, we'll see the good results from this in the future. But again, I think the 0.05 falls right in with what we're talking about, getting people to change their driving habits, especially when you're coming up on a work zone. And the more cameras, the better. I don't give a flying flip if this raises money, but if it saves lives and our members can go home, like Dave said, and WSGRTA members. I just went to the Worker Memorial last week. Unbelievable program. In honoring a gentleman, Mr. Wheeler, that passed away on an accident this year. This has got to stop. And it makes it harder to retain people that will work in this industry. They had a group of 6 people at the memorial, and the accident that happened down in Vancouver, they hadn't been set up 90 seconds to repair potholes at night. A drunk driver came in. All 6 of them went to the hospital. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries. But this is what we're talking about. Any camera we can take to get people to slow down, that's what we're trying to accomplish. We've got to save lives, like Dave mentioned. Being at over 800, again, people dying on our highways, this crazy driving, people not paying attention has got to stop. So with that, I'll wrap up.
Well, thank you, Billy and Dave. And yeah, I was watching the news the other night, and they had, I think, 4 different instances around the state just in the past week of drivers driving into work zones. So it's a kind of a scary time out there, and the numbers, target 0, we're heading in the wrong direction there. And I appreciate all the work that you do, just not only to protect our members, WSGRTA members, but also getting the habits of people out there on the roads to change. It's a culture shift. We got to change the habits of people when they enter the work zones. And if we have to hit them in the pocketbook or whatever it is, and hopefully more than that, it just saves lives. So thank you for that.